Welcome to the Grace Period, where we get real about attorney mental health and well-being and pull back the veil on the high-stakes world of big law. I'm your host, Emily Logan Stedman, a commercial litigator, partner, and someone who believes that there's always room for a little more grace, even in a high-stakes profession. Here, I share real stories from my own journey in big law and invite you behind the scenes, beyond the billable hour, to talk about what it means to stay human in a demanding field. Whether you're a lawyer, a legal professional, or someone trying to find your footing, this space is for you. Let's pull back the curtain, start the conversation, and find our grace period together. Disclaimer, the views and opinions shared on this podcast are mine alone and do not necessarily reflect those of my firm or any organization. This podcast is for informational and entertainment purposes only. It is not legal advice, and listening does not create an attorney-client relationship. Today, on episode 52 of the Grace Period, I want to share something personal. My own journey with anxiety, burnout, and recovery. Let's start at the beginning. It's 1986. Hugh Stedman is a practicing attorney and insurance in-house counsel. Juanita Stedman is a teacher by day and a first-year law student at night. She's pregnant with their first child, me. I'm quite literally learning civil procedure in the womb. I arrived 6.5 weeks early, interrupting my mom's finals. My new parents craft and mail out my birth announcement. Stedman & Stedman is pleased to announce that Emily Logan Stedman has joined the firm as an associate. That's right. From the beginning, my path was seemingly set. Just like my parents, I would be an attorney. No pressure. And yet, I internalized this expectation, this ambition from the jump. It led me to be a worrier. As early as first grade, I remember my teacher, Mrs. Swift, telling me, "Emily, you're going to go gray very early if you keep worrying so much." Well, I had to start dyeing my hair in my late 20s, so she may not have been wrong about that. I've lived with anxiety and low mood for most of my life. I call myself an anxious achiever, a term I borrow from Harvard Business Review and one that fits me very well. For a long time, my anxiety was just part of my engine. It kept me moving, it kept me organized, it kept me striving. I had systems, routines, and coping strategies that worked, at least well enough that most people had no idea what was going on under the surface. If you weren't in my inner circle, you'd probably never know I was struggling. That all changed in 2016 when I entered big law. Suddenly, the pressure and expectations weren't just high, they were relentless. I went from managing my anxiety to feeling completely overwhelmed, out of my depth, and honestly scared. I started to believe that I was the only one who couldn't keep up, that I was the only one who felt alone, who felt like a failure, and who felt like maybe she wasn't cut out for this. So I kept it to myself. I thought, just try harder, push through, and you'll prove that you belong here. Looking back, I can see the signs of burnout that this caused long before I ever even knew the word, let alone used it. I stopped doing things that made me happy. I withdrew from friends and family. I told myself I was just tired, but the truth was I was running on empty. There were days when sleep felt like the only escape. I'd catch myself wishing for a minor illness or accident, something that would force me to stop and rest and allow me to do it guilt-free. If you've ever felt that way, I want you to know you're not alone and you're not broken. The turning point for me was admitting out loud that I wasn't happy, that I was struggling, and that I needed help. That was not easy. It culminated in a panic attack on a boat in the middle of the ocean while trying to deep sea fish with my family. That is what led my dad to pull me aside and say, I see why you might not want to do this forever. But for someone who had built her identity on not just being an attorney, but being competent and reliable, saying out loud, admitting that I'm struggling felt like failure. I thought I had failed. But it was actually the first step toward recovery and finding a new place and a fresh start and a way to go forward in this career in big law more sustainably. Now, recovering, getting better, wasn't easy, quick, or linear. There were always setbacks. There were days I felt like I wasn't making any progress or getting any better at all. But I turned to therapy. I experimented with new routines. I learned how to meditate. I learned how to read for fun. I returned to playing tennis. And I set boundaries. I learned to say no, and I learned to protect time for myself, even when it felt impossible to do that. And maybe most importantly, I found people who I could talk to, other lawyers who understood what I was going through. Here's what I wish I knew sooner. Burning out is not a personal flaw. It's a normal response to chronic stress. It's also an inevitable response to chronic stress. You can't just outwork anxiety and burnout forever. Sooner or later, you have to face it head on. And asking for help is not weakness. It's actually brave and courageous. And it's an important thing to learn how to do. Not just for your own well-being, but for the sustainability of your career. Having other people help you, support you, be in your corner and on your team is the only way to grow in this profession. If you're listening to this and any of it sounds familiar, know you're not alone. And know to recover and move forward and build a sustainable career, it's not only possible, but it can happen with the smallest steps. So start small. Talk to someone you trust. Reach out to a professional, or just give yourself permission to pause, to take a breath. Your well-being isn't just important for your job, it's important for your life. Thank you for joining me on this episode of The Grace Period. Remember, you don't have to choose between your well-being and your ambition. By setting boundaries, building supportive habits, and giving yourself permission to pause, you can thrive in the law and in life. Until next time, take care of yourselves and each other. That is the path to our grace period. Disclaimer: the views expressed here are solely my own and do not represent the official policy or position of my firm or any organization. This podcast is for informational and entertainment purposes only, not professional or legal advice. It does not create an attorney-client relationship.